Hello and welcome to Epicenter Bitcoin, the show which talks about the technologies, projects, and startups driving decentralization and the global cryptocurrency revolution. My name is Sébastien Couture.
And I'm Fabian Crain. Today is August 17th, 2014, and thanks very much for joining us for our 33rd episode. So today we're happy to be kind of back in our original formation after Sébastien's travel. So Sébastien, it's good to have you back.
Thanks. It's great to be back. I'm happy to be back after, I guess, 2.5 weeks of holiday through the Balkans, so through Albania and Montenegro and Croatia. So it was a great time, but it's good to be back. And by the way, I just wanted to say that you did a really, really good job on those episodes. I listened to them as they were coming out, and although I had very, very limited access to internet, I managed to download them and listen to them on some bus rides in between towns. So
I hope it didn't ruin you.
No, actually, I really liked the Radko Albrecht one. I thought it was a really good introduction to
peer-to-peer lending.
Yeah, to peer-to-peer lending.
Yeah, very interesting how this is such a strangely unique fit. I wasn't aware of it before the interview, but it was very interesting.
Yeah. So just as a reminder, this week our Coin Summit episode is with Oliver Janssens and Andrew Turner. Oliver Janssens, of course, who did the $100,000 bounty to replace the Bitcoin Foundation. So they talk about that bounty and how they issued 40% of that bounty to Mike Hearn for his Lighthouse project. And also
90% actually.
90%? I thought it was $40,000. And also a very interesting interview with Michael Jackson, who is a partner at Mangrove Ventures. He's a venture capitalist, and he's the former chief operating officer of Skype. And so in the interview, he talks about how to basically go regulate disruptive technologies. I mean, so how you should or not regulate them, and talks about his experiences with Skype and how there are a lot of parallels with Bitcoin. So I thought it was a super interesting interview, and you should definitely check that out. It's on our SoundCloud page.
Yeah, and today's episode, we're going to talk about Reality Keys. So our guest today is Edmund Edgar. He is the founder of the company. I met him. I saw that he signed up for our Bitcoin Startups event this Tuesday. And I remember seeing Reality Keys before mentioned at the Amsterdam conference because they won an award there. They won the Startup Challenge there. So afterwards, I contacted him. It's like, hey, you should give a talk. So he's going to give a talk at the next meetup. And after this meetup on Tuesday, we talked with him. It was super interesting. So I thought, it'd be great to have him on today. So Reality Keys, he's going to talk a lot more about it and go in depth about it. But they're providing cryptographic data feeds or real life events. And of course, this is really crucial if you want to build services on top, derivatives on top, insurance contracts. So when we often talk about Ethereum, about these kind of Bitcoin 2.0 protocols, they depend on this kind of absolutely crucial. It's like an infrastructure component of that, I would say, the future of cryptocurrency and those applications that develop on top of it. And he was previously the director of information technology at Princeton Review in Japan, and he's been out there for a long time, and he's also a graduate of Oxford. It seems somehow there's a few Bitcoin people there now. Came from there. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
So I would perhaps we can get started before we dive into Reality Keys. Can you tell us about how you got involved in Bitcoin?
I guess it was the same as I've heard of. A lot of people got involved in the same way, which was after we heard about the WikiLeaks banking blockade. We thought what I thought was, well, why is it that if I want to send money to somebody, I have to go through somebody like PayPal or some bank in the middle? We know how to do cryptographic. We know how to do key pairs and things. Why do I have to depend on these guys? Isn't there a way I could send money directly to these people so that I could trade my effort for something else that WikiLeaks wanted? And so I went looking for peer-to-peer currency and then found Bitcoin, which discussed a whole bunch of other problems that I hadn't thought of, but luckily Satoshi had solved. So that's how I got into it.
Oh, that's interesting. So like following WikiLeaks, it was like, oh, what we would need is a peer-to-peer currency.
That's right. So you put it into Google and there it
exists. Yeah, that's super interesting. And I guess then let's get started with, so then how did you then end up starting Reality Keys? Were there other projects you were involved before Reality Keys?
Well, I mean, I worked on a couple of things to do with virtual worlds, which is another thing that I've been working in with things like Second Life and OpenSim. And I did some work on a payment module for that, which we ended up not releasing because there was just not very much interest in the OpenSim world right now. So I spent some time working on that, and then started looking at this problem and kind of all kinds of areas and how you would build a prediction exchange, a prediction market, and how you would solve these problems. And and looking at it, it just seemed like there was this big gap that nobody was filling, where everybody was saying, okay, we're going to need somebody who's going to be getting real world data and effectively connecting that data to the blockchain, somebody who's going to be getting real world data and translating it into a form that a Bitcoin node can understand. And everyone was kind of assuming that organization away, but nobody was actually doing it. So I thought we'd better go ahead and build it. That's what we did.
And so you built Reality Keys. When did you launch?
Let's think. We launched in, I think it was beginning of February or the end of January this year. So we started building it about October kind of time last year.
Okay. So can you tell us about the parent company is called Social Minds. You're based in Japan, and tell us about some of the other things that you do.
That's right. So a lot of our revenue comes from sort of consulting and web development work. Then we built an open, a 3D virtual worlds platform for connecting with OpenSim. And that allowed you to connect open source learning management systems like Moodle into the virtual world so that you could manage things like study data. You could teach inside a 3D virtual world, and all your study data and stuff would then be stored back in Moodle, and you can manage all that in your learning management system. So that's the other project that we've been working on up till now. That's still going, but a lot of our effort right now is going into Reality Keys.
Huh. I'm always fascinated by the amount of people that I find that were involved with 3D virtual worlds and things like Second Life before they got into Bitcoin.
Right. I mean, it was this area that before we had Bitcoin, where we had this, sort of open digital currency, and this sort of open scriptable world where anybody can create things, and then they can actually, anybody can program those things, and they all work together. So, in some ways, there are kind of a lot of parallels. Obviously, the Second Life currency is managed by Linden Labs, this one central company. But as a user, it's something that you can use for micropayments and something you can automate in very interesting ways. So I think it's attracted a lot of the same people who have then found Bitcoin that can kind of take the idea of an open currency that can do micropayments and that we can very easily build APIs on and very easily script. Takes that, Bitcoin takes that to a whole new level.
So if you had to kind of summarize Reality Keys in like a few sentences for somebody who has no idea, and maybe I can give it a try, you can improve on my try. So the basic idea is that you provide a data feed, on facts.
That's right. So I like to describe it as a certificate authority for facts. Like VeriSign for facts. So what those guys do, something like VeriSign, will take information about identity. So if you've got a computer that wants to know, is the other computer that it's talking to really Amazon? Then it'll use some cryptographic data from VeriSign, and your computer can look at that cryptographic data. Your computer may not know about identity, but your computer knows about cryptography, so it can check if a key matches, and it can check if that's really Amazon. Now, the fact that VeriSign can do that is based on having some people who are kind of in contact with the normal human real world, right? So they can check documents, they can make phone calls, they can do all these sort of normal things that a computer wouldn't be able to do, and then provide some cryptographic data that then the computer can use.
So, how does that work? Can you run us through the kind of technical side of where do you get the data from?
Right.
And then how do you make those facts available?
Right. So let's imagine that you want to know about a particular event. Say, is the exchange rate of is €1 going to be worth more than $1 at the end of next month? So you go to our website and you put in that information, or you could do it with our API. And we give you 2 public keys at that point. Okay, so we give you one public key representing, yes, it will be greater than $1, and one public key representing, no, it won't be greater than $1. Then we wait for that date that you specified to come around. And when that date comes around, we pull from some data source to find out whether that thing happened or not. Okay, so in this case, we would pull from the European Central Bank, who have a data feed. So then if there's a kind of a dispute process that maybe we'll get into in a second, but basically if it happened, we're going to release the private key for the yes public key that we gave you earlier. And if it didn't happen, we'll give you the private key for the no public key that we gave you earlier. So that's what we do. Now, in the Bitcoin context, what you could have done with those is when you got the public key, you could have made a special transaction, a single transaction that you and some other counterparty that you have would share. And that transaction says that the yes key plus your key, or the no key plus the other guy's key, can unlock this money. So you'd say either of those combinations can unlock this money. So then when you get the private key, whoever's actually supposed to have won that, whoever's supposed to get paid as a result of that contract, can then spend the money.
So what I find is very interesting about this, and I absolutely wasn't aware that this is even possible, because it's kind of a multi-signature transaction, no? But
Right.
It's a different kind because you specifically specify it's those 2 keys together or those other 2 keys together, but it's not like any 2 of 3 keys.
That's right. So that's something that, at least doing it kind of directly as described without a clever trick, which I'll mention in a second, but doing it without a clever trick is something that right now is a non-standard transaction in Bitcoin. So for people who aren't familiar with that, that means that by default, most of the nodes, most of the computers on the Bitcoin network aren't going to relay that transaction to other nodes. And most of the miners aren't going to mine it. But there are some miners that will reliably mine those transactions. So you just have to directly send them to that miner. So that's been something that, because it's been non-standard, it's a little bit of a pain to use. So that's probably why you haven't really heard of patterns like these. That most of the software that you would use, even with multi-sig, has been relying on the things that you can do as standard transactions. Now, having said that, there is a little trick that you can use right now, which is that it's actually possible to kind of combine these keys. So you can effectively stick 2 public keys together, and turn that into one public key. And then when you get the private key, you can stick the 2 private keys together and turn that into one private key. So if you do that little bit of trickery, then you can actually structure this thing as a traditional multi-signature transaction, which says either this one key or this other one key will be enough to unlock the money.
Interesting.
Having said that, so we, as I said, right now these are non-standard transactions on the the Bitcoin network, and you have to send them to usually to Eligius, the pool that will mine these things. But Gavin Anderson, the chief scientist of the Bitcoin Foundation, came up with has written a pull request that's been accepted in the main Bitcoin source code right now that is going to make these transactions and all kinds of other transactions using the scripting language in existing ways, is going to make those standard. And that's been merged into Bitcoin Master, and it should all be in the next Bitcoin release, so probably in Bitcoin 0.10.
Okay. So these types of transactions will eventually become standard. What other types of transactions are we talking about here? Are there any other types of transactions that would be included in this pull request that would affect the type of things we can do with reality keys?
Well, as far as reality keys goes, I think there are quite a lot of little use cases, but that's the one that we're really thinking about that'll affect us. There'll be a lot of other things that'll affect other people. For example, things like some really interesting use cases that aren't reality keys use cases, like doing cross-chain atomic trading, so that if you want to trade your Litecoins for my Bitcoins.
Can you also do things such as either those 3 keys or those 2 keys are valid? Those kind of things will be possible.
That's
as well.
right. That's all going to be possible. So the only limitation here really is that you're limited to a maximum of 15 signature checking operations, which in practice is usually as many keys as you can actually stuff into the transaction, because there's a limit to the size of that. But that still gives you quite a lot of leeway. So I think the kind of the canonical standard transaction that's going to use reality keys is going to be if this person wins and yes wins, or if the other person wins and no wins, or if the yes person and the no person both agree. Those 3 options you'd all want to run independently and to be able to unlock your funds. You're also probably going to want to add some extra. Maybe this is something we talk about later in the discussion, but you may also want to add some extra authorities. So if you don't want to trust reality keys 100%, because you never know if something's going to happen to us, you may want to add a competitor to us. I don't think there's anyone directly doing what we do, but you may, for example, want to add a standard kind of escrow arbitration guy, or and really anyone else you want to add to that as an arbiter. You could also add in different combinations.
So you could have like reality keys and some other reality keys competitor, for example, 3 of them, and then you'd say it has to be a majority of them. Then.
Exactly, that's right. Or whatever pattern you want to set up there.
Related to that, what's the use case? So you said one option would also be if the 2 parties agree, even if so that they can essentially, I guess, do whatever with the money. What's the idea behind that? Why is that necessary?
Yeah, there are 2 reasons you might want it. One is that it gives you kind of a way out if reality keys turn out to be unreliable, which of course we won't, but you certainly want to have that one covered. So if you there are some ways of setting up these deals that don't even have an arbiter at all and just rely on the 2 parties both having the money stuck there and having an incentive to move it. So that's one thing you certainly want to do, is you certainly want to both be able to move that money.
If you guys will never release the private key because you disappear or something.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And another reason you might want to do it is you might decide that you want to end that transaction early. So you might not want to wait for that event. One of you might want to, just pay a one to get out of that contract at a different rate. So there are, I think there are quite a few reasons why you might end up wanting, to both agree. And apart from the slightly increased sort of transaction size, there's pretty much no downside to having that option, right?
Yeah.
So I'd like to discuss data a little bit. So there are a few data sources that you use. Could you go over the different data sources that are used by realities?
Yeah. So right now we pull from the European Central Bank for traditional fiat currency exchange rates. We then have altcoin exchange rates, which I think, altcoin transaction information, and Bitcoin transaction information that we're getting from Blockchain Info and Blocker.io. So that allows you to do things like, the exchange rate thing allows you to do kind of bets on future rates and currency hedging. The transaction thing allows you to do things like say, okay, release this key if this amount of money is paid. So that gives you quite a lot of interesting use cases. Then we have Freebase, which is pretty much everything in the known universe. So this is this monster community curated database operated by Google. It was originally a separate project that I think Google acquired, which has all kinds of data that it pulls in from all kinds of different data sources, a lot of it from Wikipedia. And that will allow you to really, and it's very well structured kind of semantic data. So you can really create kind of arbitrary propositions, right? Will Barack Obama, marry Madonna? You can say really whatever you like. You can formulate really whatever kind of question that you want to formulate if it's about factual stuff. And we can express that in this Freebase language. And hopefully Freebase will also have the correct answer. If they don't, we'll have a solution that we can talk about.
So I'm interested. I had never heard of Freebase before, and so I just kind of realized that it's probably what powers a lot of the Google Open Graph stuff, right?
Yeah, I think so. That's my understanding, is that that a lot of that information it will be powering sort of Google Suggest and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So who curates this data?
As I understand it, it's a lot of volunteers are contributing, and then they have their own kind of full-time staff at Freebase. That's how I understand they're doing it. So it's quite similar to the Wikipedia model, except that it's semantic, it's structured data designed for machines rather than kind of text data designed for humans.
Okay.
And so, perhaps we can go into, because obviously there's going to be errors there,
right.
And there may also be ways for people to intentionally fake the data.
That's right.
So can you talk a bit about how Reality Keys is going to address this problem?
Yeah, so the way we work is we effectively give you information in two stages. The first thing that we do is we pull from the API, so we get you an automated result. So if that's, in the Freebase case, it'll be information that may have been tinkered with by somebody, or, it may just be inaccurate. We then publish that information on our website, and you have a certain amount of time which you can set when you create the contract, or when you register the fact with us, during which you can pay us an objection fee. And if you pay us that fee, then we will have a human just check it out and Google the result and get to the bottom of it. So what that does is, in the vast majority of cases, we don't need to do anything, right? In the vast majority of cases, the API will settle the thing correctly, and we only need to get a human involved in the thing if somebody pays the fee, and they'll usually only bother paying the fee if the API is wrong. So what that gives us is, in the average case, we get a very, very low cost of settlement. We only really need the human when they're absolutely required. But because there's this human kind of fallback mechanism, you can be very, very confident that that we're going to get to the right result.
So, sort of jumping in here, this is like slightly related, but slightly off topic. So that also means that in the sort of default case, you guys don't make any money, right? That's right.
That's how it's structured at the moment. I think in the future we may end up doing some kind of different levels of service. So especially if people end up, putting a lot of money behind these contracts, then I think people will be willing to pay for a faster service or a better secured service, or So I think in the end we will end up charging for some things apart from this kind of human action. But we'll see how it goes. If it ends up that we do end up needing a lot of human interaction, then that might be maybe sufficient to fund the whole thing. But I don't think it's a problem. I think once we've got a lot of money spinning around these contracts, there will be some kind of extra service that people will be willing to pay for.
So with regards to this human intervention, can you go into detail about how that works? Like I can see some cases where perhaps even humans would not correctly interpret the data. I mean, say for instance that you're dealing with information that is specific to one country or which is in another language, and perhaps you have to translate. I'm sorry,
ambiguous.
Or ambiguous, right? There's a whole bunch of use cases where perhaps the data is different to interpret.
That's right, and that's true actually of settling any of these contracts. And it's also it's also true of things like betting contracts right now, that they're often ambiguous, corner cases. And in that case, we'll just do what we can. So that's kind of the service that we offer. So I would caution against people create, as I say, with Freebase, you can put in pretty much any kind of proposition, but obviously you don't want to go putting in propositions that there's no way we could actually settle, and we do want to be able to settle these things based on publicly available information as well. So not just information that we're able to get at, but information that anybody is able to verify, so that everybody can tell that those responses that we publish are actually correct.
But so if somebody puts a fact in that isn't actually, you can't make a decision on.
Yeah.
How do you guys deal with that? I mean,
we'll just do what we can with it. We've got some stuff in there where people manage to structure free-base propositions in a way that don't actually mean anything.
Yeah.
And I think there is messing around with it. It's probably okay, but we can.
Or you could just not publish any private key then.
Yeah,
I guess.
Well, no, we wouldn't publish neither or both. Ultimately, if somebody pays the fee, I think we're going to end up publishing one of the keys or the other key.
Yeah.
But
whoever pays more.
That's so not something that we can do, because that would shoot our reputation to hell. But what we can do is, we can at least let them put their case and see what the arguments for it are. But like I say, the best way to use the thing is not to write ambiguous stuff that's going to be hard for us to settle. And that also applies for things that Freebase may actually have an opinion about, but it's kind of tricky. I would strongly advise people not to write kind of tricky contracts and then hope that they're going to, the counterparty is going to think it means something else than what it really means. That's also something where there may be a legitimate API answer, but then a human answer may be different. So just don't get clever. just stick to reasonably unambiguous factual contracts.
So. I think this whole idea, especially a prediction market, is very interesting, and we haven't seen it yet, but it could have huge implications in the future.
Yeah.
But of course, it also can be very controversial,
right?
And it can lead to cases that are morally tricky.
Yeah.
So. Specifically, I could put up like a fact, Barack Obama will be killed in 2015.
Right.
And then some parties could create a contract based on that. And then essentially, you could fund the killing of somebody in a sort of decentralized way, which is a crazy idea, no?
Yeah.
So, I'm sure you don't want to be your platform to be used for that kind of thing.
Want to be used for that kind of thing.
So, are you going to be censoring facts?
Well, right now we actually have a couple of those namespaces blocked for Freebase, but ultimately, my view is that we are telling you the truth about what's happening in the world. We don't know what you're doing with that stuff, and the problem here, in the Barack Obama. In a lot of these cases is that there are all kinds of legitimate things that you could be doing with that data, and we can't tell which it is you're doing, right? So we can't tell the difference between, we don't even see the contract at all, right? So we can't tell the difference between what could be a will or what could be a life insurance contract or an insurance contract or a bet or what, right? We just don't see any of that stuff. Having said that, what I would say about these illegal contracts is that our service is very, very public. Bitcoin is also very, very public. I know there are ways to be anonymous, but Bitcoin is also, public and leaks a lot of information in ways that you may not have thought of. We also, if you read our policy, our privacy policy, we do record IP addresses, which we would cooperate with law enforcement if there was a reason to think somebody was committing a crime. So I think that, to be honest, if I was a criminal trying to assassinate somebody, then I would probably not use a public legal service like Reality Keys. I think ultimately the world will probably end up with. I heard there was somebody who was doing was offering to do escrow for assassination contracts of politicians. Which they thought was kind of a good thing in itself, regardless of the politician. So I suspect that people who are interested in doing that kind of thing will use a service run by somebody who's a bit more into actually doing that, and also probably an ambiguous, kind of a darknet thing on Tor or something.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd say about it is that if you wanted to make contracts where you would profit if Barack Obama was assassinated, you don't need Bitcoin or reality keys to do that right now. I mean, I remember after 9/11, there was a lot of speculation that a bunch of stock trades had been made by somebody who knew in advance that 9/11 was going to happen, right? And I mean, there were a bunch of stock trades that you could make, followed by some kind of destruction of property, that would actually alter, change the stock. So there's nothing particularly new about this.
Well, it's a lot more direct, of course. If he,
there are certainly some new patterns that you can imagine that would have been difficult before. But the other thing I'd say is, I mean, even if you wanted to bet on the assassination of Barack Obama, effectively you can do that right now, right? I mean, I don't know if any bookmaker will offer you odds on the death of Barack Obama, but you can certainly get odds on Joe Biden becoming president. I mean, that's the same thing pretty much. Right? It's something that in a way has always been with us, and it will certainly have some new forms as these contracts, take place in the Bitcoin world. Like I say, you generally probably wouldn't be sensible to use reality keys for these kind of contracts, but maybe someone will try.
Yeah, but like you said, you're just reporting the facts.
That's right. We just report.
I mean, you're not dealing with the contracts, and so
that's right. And the facts are the facts. I mean,
right. But that's I guess that sort of also ties into the question: is like, why did you choose to do it this way with using two Bitcoin addresses and publishing the private key instead of, I guess, being involved directly in the contracts would be one way, or maybe signing a cryptographic message, or I don't know what other options there would be.
That's right. So what a lot of people are doing in this area, certainly for these kind of arbitration type of use cases, is that you're making a transaction that needs a certain number of signatures, and then you have an arbiter who is one of the parties to that, who is one of those signatures. Or maybe multiple arbiters who give you multiple signatures. And we were a little bit reluctant to do that. Firstly, because we really don't want to know about your contract, right? I mean, it seems like people have a reasonable, expectation of privacy in this kind of area. And it would actually kind of broaden our regulatory service in a way. If we're actually involved in these contracts, there's always the possibility that you're going to get involved in court cases where somebody says, well, we think maybe the kind of the machine readable text of this contract says this, but
I just want to point out that it doesn't have to be a contract. I mean, it could just be some sort of an automation.
Well, that's right. So, I mean, we've actually, the thing that I was about to say is that we've been talking about this completely in the Bitcoin context. But like I say, I don't think of us as a Bitcoin arbitrator. I don't think of us even as limited to cryptocurrency. We're a certificate authority for facts. So you might, it might be a question of, okay, we've got it. Well, certainly it could be a will. That's a case that I'd love to do. Like I said, at the moment we've got this space block, but I'd love to be able to help people with wills, to get quick results.
So you would need to have, for that to happen, you would need to have a data feed on people's deaths.
That's right. I need a data feed on people's deaths. I'd love to do that one. But also there are a lot of kind of non-cryptocurrency potential use cases that I think really haven't been explored yet because we've just never been able to do this. I mean, the one I was thinking about on the tram on the way over was, if you want to know who's won a football match and you want the trophy to deliver itself, right? Just who's supposed to be able to control the drone? Well, you want the winner of the football match to be able to bring the trophy over by the drone, I mean, that's kind of far-fetched, but or you might want to do, how are the doors going to open on the stadium? We want the losers out first because they're always in a bad mood, who knows what kind of things people are going to want to do with this. Slightly more trivially, you can make messages with these things, right? So it's not just for signing. These keys can also be used for encrypting messages. So you can write a message. You can write. I mean, we're still on the deaths use case. You might want to write a message to somebody that says, I'm your real father. I didn't want to say when I was still alive because it would be kind of weird, Well, I'm not your real father, whatever it is, I mean,
and then it could only be encrypted.
It's encrypted
decrypted once the person's
key.
dead.
That's right.
With the private key that's then published.
Yeah.
That's
that was a slightly icky one, but I'm sure people out there can come up with some other examples where I think we really haven't really begun to explore this kind of space. And also, I mean, with the example of the drone and the trophy, as more and more things in the world are are networked and automated, I think we'll see more and more use cases where you say, okay, the one that Mike Hearn was discussing was something like, has this car had its debt paid off?
With the lease payments and the operation of the car.
And he had a kind of looking at the blockchain, but you don't necessarily have to look at the blockchain. You don't even necessarily need an internet connection to do this. You can just come in and once you've got the key, you can bring that over offline. You can communicate it however you like.
So you could build a car in the beginning. That would be unlocked every month with a different private key, and you can set it up beforehand, and each month with the lease payments you get the corresponding private key.
I think there's a huge amount of kind of stuff, a lot of it very sci-fi, but the world is getting very sci-fi. So,
I think this is probably one of the single most interesting aspects of Bitcoin 2.0, and really we need services like Reality Keys to make that all happen,
right?
In essence. So can you tell us about some other promising applications that could be built on top of Reality Keys, given that you have the proper data sources? What are some other types of things that really far-fetched, super futuristic stuff?
Well, actually, I should tell you. Oh, there's a data source I forgot to mention, which isn't that futuristic, but I should just tell you about it since I've nearly finished it. Which is that we pull from Runkeeper. So actually, somebody said to us that they wanted us to do the Withings API, which is...
I have one of those.
You have one of those. You see, I don't, which is why we didn't build the Withings API. But these are these... Tell me if I've got this wrong. These are these kind of internet-connected gadgets, right?
It's a Wi-Fi scale.
Wi-Fi scales, and they have heartbeat things and all these other things. So they said that they wanted to be able to do basically contracts with their future selves. So rather than doing contracts with some other person. And I love this idea. I love it kind of opportunistically short term because it's so easy to bootstrap, right? You don't need to find the counterparty. You just, if you know how to use it, your future self also knows how to use it. So we went ahead and built that. We've integrated with the Runkeeper API. And so we can pull from there and I can say, if I run, 10 kilometers by next Thursday, then I'm going to get this money back. If I don't do that run, then it's going to go to charity.
How would you do that? So how would so it makes sense to me how you could pay it back to yourself.
Yeah.
But could you automate it being paid to charity?
Well, we need at least the way I've thought of doing it, maybe something clever that I haven't thought of, but we need to get the charity to claim it effectively.
Yeah.
Because they need to know how to kind of cash in this special transaction. There may be something cunning you can do involving, sort of time models and things, delayed transactions and stuff where you
should be possible.
You can probably do that. But yeah, so we've actually been building that as kind of an example for people to play with. So that's actually, there's a kind of a still broken version there, but that's functional now.
And you can do some nice betting thing, right? So I and Sébastien, we could bet together who's going to run more in the next 30 days. And
that's right. I'm not sure if you could do that on our IPA right now, but we could probably fix it so you could do that. And you can also do the backwards version of that one, which would be kind of a sponsored. The backwards version of the thing that I suggested, which would be like a sponsored walk, right? Which is that your money goes to charity if you complete the run, and if you don't complete the run, then it goes back to the person who funded it.
Yeah.
So it seems to me like the opportunities are pretty much limitless. Do you intend on adding other APIs, or perhaps even opening up the platform so that other people can build in these APIs into reality keys? Like, if you look at just like if this then that, for instance, like they've got dozens and perhaps even hundreds of different APIs. Like there's APIs for everything now.
Yeah.
If you would somehow open up the platform so that people can code in APIs to be able to create these reality keys, I think that would just kind of really open up to a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. So I guess two questions there. The first one is about adding APIs, which we certainly will. And if you look at this thing and there's something that you need and we don't have it, then let us know. We're going to be adding APIs all the time. As far as opening it up goes, it's certainly something I'm interested in doing. I'm a little bit worried about I'm a little bit worried about kind of the terms of service of some of this data that people could set us up to pull from. So I'm a little bit nervous of allowing you to register things that we would then not be allowed to pull from. That may turn out to be okay, but that's a concern. The other way we might do this is to use somebody else in the middle. So there are services like Yahoo Pipes, I think is still running, which is kind of this kind of toolkit for kind of slicing and dicing information from different sources. So what we might do is just do a kind of a generic API to Yahoo Pipes and then pull from that, and then you can make whatever pipe you want. And I think there is also an open source implementation of Yahoo Pipes out there somewhere, so that if they stop providing that service, we can still confirm those facts. The other way this might be going is that some people are working on platforms that are really much more that will do really kind of much more generic computation, and that's something that we're also interested in doing. I'm a little bit nervous about some of the kind of the legal implications, but it's something I'm looking into.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so the recent announcement was Codius, which I don't know if you heard of. That's by the Ripple team. So this is kind of their answer to Ethereum. In that what Ethereum does is it allows you to make kind of arbitrary logic that all of the nodes, I guess in the Ethereum network, are going to be able to run and validate, so that you can run effectively arbitrary logic on under these conditions. These funds or these assets should go here, and under these conditions they should go to this other person. So that's what Ethereum do. But then if you want to do that without actually forcing all the nodes in the network or even forcing the miners to all execute all these arbitrary contracts that may have loops in all kind of other difficulties. The other way to do it is if the parties to this thing just agree on some what are called oracles, on some authorities who are going to run that contract for them and say what the result is. So this is something that Gavin Anderson was talking about. He's written a post where he calls it Bit Ethereum, which is this concept that you're going to do sort of key all the key-based stuff and the kind of the property tracking on the Bitcoin network. But when it comes to actually running some arbitrary code and slicing and dicing a bunch of different data sources, you could have a bunch of trusted arbiters to do that, and they don't have to be that trusted because you can combine a whole bunch of different ones and take a majority vote. So he called it Bit Ethereum, and then there's this implementation called Codius. And what Codius do is they use the Google native engine. Is it called
Google
NACL?
App? No,
it's not the app engine. It's kind of this kind of sandboxed programming. I guess it's a runtime. I don't know. Anyway, if you Google NACL, that'll show up. And their project is called Codius. So I think that they've come up with an implementation that is right now is just a JavaScript sandbox, I think, rather than using NACL, they say they're going to use. But the idea is that they're going to write, you're going to have this sandbox that a lot of different people can run. And you'll be able to write in various different programming languages, and you'll be able to pull from, whatever data sources you want, and then run whatever code you want to.
So would the idea be that you allow, so that either, I guess that there'll be two ways, if I'm correct, that this could be interface with reality keys, either that some of this code could use a fact from reality keys as an input in the computations, or you could have an output of the Codius, the Oracle result as an input.
Right, that's right. So the input thing, maybe you want to do that. That's an interesting thought. I've been just kind of tinkering with the idea of setting up a Codius node and doing that the way we do it, where we just release keys. Again, I'm a little bit worried. Okay, are there situations where if I'm running arbitrary financial code that people are going to do naughty things, and that's my responsibility? Or, I'm not quite sure. Still kind of need to talk to my lawyer about that one. But I don't know. The Codius team seem to think that it's an okay thing to be doing. So that's certainly something that we may do with reality keys. Alternatively, it may be that reality keys end up carrying on doing what we're doing for things where you need facts, and then a bunch of other people are going to end up running these Codius nodes. And signing. Right now, they sign transactions rather than releasing keys. I think in their implementation.
So I think there's definitely a lot more to talk about the application stuff, and I think we should definitely do that. But I just very briefly want to ask about one more topic that sort of relates to the technical side to this. And so obviously you're using Bitcoin. So
just ask you a question. I think the answer is no, we're not using Bitcoin.
Well, you're using Bitcoin addresses.
Kind of. Okay, that's right.
Public keys, right? So my question is, because you're studying Ethereum and other projects like that. So if an Ethereum application wants to use reality keys, would they then use the Bitcoin public, Bitcoin private key, etc., and essentially tie that into an Ethereum contract, which is probably possible, right?
Yes.
Or would you have maybe additional ways of releasing facts that are more tied to a Ethereum platform? The public keys the key pairs that we use they are actually created by a Bitcoin D. But the keys that Bitcoin uses are just ECC key pairs. So they're not at all limited to the Bitcoin network. So without us doing anything, you can use those keys on all kinds of other systems. Anything that's capable of of checking those signatures, using the same crypto that Bitcoin does, can use our keys as they are. So it would be possible, I guess, once Ethereum is running, it would certainly be possible to just use our keys in Ethereum contracts. And also, I think on in Ripple and really anything else. So that's certainly possible. However, Ethereum has quite a nice way of handling this, which is that they allow you to literally publish a signed feed, if it's to publish data to the Ethereum blockchain, and you can then also charge for it to be read. It seems, if I understand that right. I haven't tried this. So it can be used right now, but there are probably some things that we could do to optimize for Ethereum. I'd certainly like to publish kind of Ethereum native data feeds. So that's only something I'm thinking hard about. So that, of course, would also be an interesting, different monetization way, right? If you can charge for
if you can charge for seeing those things.
Well, then I guess let's sort of dive a little bit more into the application side. So I did an interview with Gavin Wood 2 weeks ago, I think. It's just kind of as the Ether sale was ending its 2-week mark. And when I was talking to him, one area that he emphasized and that I hadn't thought so much beforehand was insurance. So, because I asked him, like, what do you think could be like one of these first big industries that would really disrupt it? Is insurance.
Right.
So, I think it's, of course, a very interesting use case, also very closely related to prediction markets. No?
Yeah. At least technically, it's all the same moves, right?
Technically, it's like kind of the same thing, That's
right, yeah.
So, but I was wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I certainly think it's a plausible use case. There are some situations where I think you might actually want to know your counterparty to do a lot of insurance stuff, whereas in a prediction market case, it doesn't really matter who the counterparty is as long as you get paid. But in an insurance case, you often probably want to know about the motivations of the person you're dealing with, as well as, the final financial bottom line. Yeah. So, if you're, making a contract where they're going to get paid if the lighthouse gets burnt down, then you would probably want to know the identity of that person. But that kind of, I guess, depends how fireproof your lighthouse is, right? I mean, there might be situations where that's going to work. So I certainly think there are some insurance use cases. I think in a way, yeah, a lot of them are just a little bit tricky in terms of getting the right sort of incentive structure. But it can certainly be done, yeah.
Okay, so insurance, yes, I think it's definitely an interesting use case. I guess also a big challenge will be, I think, to just build these user interfaces on top of it, to build like ways of price finding. Right. I think that's going to be a huge challenge.
That's right. There's a lot to do. We've kind of consciously taken one very small slice of this problem. We haven't tried to build, a prediction market or any of the other things that we could build, with the exception of this Runkeeper one, which nobody else was going to do, right? And because we really just wanted to make something that people could take a look at and learn from. But yeah, that's right. We're not interested in building any of those things. We're hoping that other people will. But the great thing about working in Bitcoin right now is that there is just so much, innovative talent. And so many people building any damn things that you can pretty much say that if it should be built, somebody's going to build it. So I think there's a lot of work to do to get, especially to get kind of beyond techie stuff, to get for normal users to be able to use this stuff. There's a lot of work to do, but there are a lot of very smart people who seem to be doing it.
Yeah, I think that's the case with a lot of this Bitcoin stuff is just building the user experience to a level at which people can actually use it.
I mean, we had a talk on multisig, so it wasn't the last one; it was one at the previous meetup, and I thought one thing the guy said was really interesting, and he was like that the biggest challenge with multisig is going to be usability.
Absolutely.
And like user interfaces and all. Like otherwise it's pretty simple. Understanding is pretty simple, but actually making it usable, and that is a big challenge.
That's right. And I suspect that we're going to end up with effectively sort of custom clients or at least custom kind of user interaction elements for all these different kinds of things. So to us, technically, we've been talking, insurance is just the same as a bet, and that's just the same pretty much as a Runkeeper, challenge on whether I'm going to finish this run. And to Bitcoin, they all look kind of similar, but to the user, they look like very different things, and they're going to need very different different interfaces.
No, absolutely. I think I totally agree.
So I was just going to say, I think there's an opportunity in pretty much every single space. That's what follows from that. We're not going to have one person who's going to build the contract interface. There's an opportunity for somebody to do a really interesting project on weather futures and somebody else to do a prediction market.
What are some other sectors that you think can be completely disrupted by
the one that kind of struck the one that I've kind of learned more about since I've been doing this is kind of sort of financial futures, where I've actually been talking to some people from the industry. So what I hadn't realized was, I mean, even things like weather futures. If you Google, okay, I want to do, as a sort of a retail customer or small business customer, if you say I want to just sort of hedge against rain tomorrow because I'm doing an outdoor event or something, there's actually not much there in terms of good options. And talking to people in the industry, it really seems like we've got all of the dysfunctionality that we're used to in the payment space. That's the same and worse in the kind of in the future space. So I think there's a huge opportunity there.
And there's also a complete lack of transparency when it comes to pricing.
Yeah. And by the way, this is one of the interesting things about reality keys is that you can be very transparent or very obscure, as you like. So if you use our keys as they are, they're published on the website, anybody can look at the blockchain at least once those have been settled, anybody can look at the blockchain and see that this was a contract about this particular fact.
Oh, that's true. Yes.
But it's also possible, if you prefer to do it this way, it's also possible to combine our key using a similar trick to the ones we just discussed earlier. You can combine our key, you can kind of blind it, and combine it with another key that's only known to the participants. And if you do that, then nobody's going to know. We won't know. We won't be able to look at the blockchain and know that this transaction in this.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
We've kind of tried to go with what I think is nice about this way of doing it is that it kind of goes with the grain of Bitcoin, that it gives the users a lot of control. If you want to be transparent, you can be very, very transparent in a way that didn't used to be possible. And if you want privacy, you can have a lot of privacy. Whereas, we've been used to this kind of very kind of slightly nasty kind of half measure where you can never really get as transparent as you want or as private as you want.
So what kind of timeline do you expect? Do you think we're going to see working applications that actually end users are going to use in... what do you expect? Is it going to be 2 years? Is it going to 1 year or longer than that?
We should have the Runkeeper one out in a week or two.
Yeah.
The things that I've heard people are building, it sounds to me like we'll have stuff out this year. From what people have told me they're building. And I just, turned up at a meetup in Berlin, last week and found some people were building on reality keys. So, it does sound like there is stuff happening and there's going to be stuff that's out and usable. That said, we're in it for the long run. When I went into this, it was very clear that we really have no idea how long it's going to take for this stuff to get traction. I'm perfectly prepared to wait 10 years and just carry on running the service with, even if hardly anybody uses it, we can just keep on providing the service, until it takes root. We're in for the long haul here.
And speaking of the long run, do you think that there's any way? Because one of the criticisms that you may get is that it is centralized and there's no transparency going on in the background. Do you think that there's a way perhaps to decentralize reality keys in the future and perhaps have some premium services built on top of that?
Yeah. So I guess there are a couple of angles to this. One is that there are some systems that are being built kind of from the ground up that are supposed to get you world sort of external information about the world through mechanisms that don't actually require any kind of trusted arbiter. And these are really interesting projects. So one is called Shellingcoin, another is called Truthcoin. I haven't looked much at Shellingcoin, but if you read, Truthcoin has some quite an extensive white paper, and I think there's quite a lot of work going on there. I'd really encourage people to look at those projects if you're interested in this area. Having said that, these things, so they rely on things like, Schelling points, where there's this idea that it's easier to get to the truth than to say something untrue. So you can, just like we get miners to all validate these transactions, and they're kind of incentivized to tell the truth, to stay in line with the consensus. The idea is that you can do something similar with facts about the world. So this is, it's a very interesting project, and it may work, but it'll be a long time. Even if they finish it soon, it'll be a long time before we know whether it works, because it really needs to be tested under real world conditions.
Yeah, and when real money is at stake.
That's right. So the same is true of Bitcoin and a lot of these, the new technologies in altcoins. But we don't really know whether they work until we've actually put some serious money behind them and given people an incentive, to try to break them. So that's one possible angle, is that it may be possible to completely decentralize the whole thing. But we don't know yet. The other angle is, okay, what can we do in the reality keys end? One thing I would say is, although you've got to choose your arbiters, you can choose as many arbiters as you like, right? As long as people actually show up to do that. So even though, we're a centralized, you can think of us as if we're a node in the total system. If you're making a contract, you might have, 7 different people, and you're taking a majority verdict from them. That's not really such a centralized system, right? You've got a majority of, it's kind of a decentralized system, but where the nodes in the system are known. Okay, so that's where, you know, I think this thing should be going, is that we have kind of these kind of known nodes. We may end up kind of internally, certainly if we end up with a lot of money riding on this thing, I'd like more kind of internal checks and balances. So as well as in your contract, you would be able to to get stuff from a bunch of different arbiters. Our keys would also depend on some kind of semi-independent organizations agree. But even there, I think the right way to do this, at least for a lot of use cases, is to have identified trusted people. So in that sense, you know, it's not going to be a system like Bitcoin where anybody can become a node without needing to gain trust. To do that, I think you need some kind of a system like, you know, Truthcoin or Shellingcoin. There are some guys. There's a project called something like Orisi, which talking about themselves as a decentralized oracle. But in a way, they end up with the same thing. I mean, you get a bunch of people who are all running nodes, and you figure out how much you should trust each of them, and you combine a bunch of them. You know, so I think that's probably going to be the model. I suspect that, as I said, when we were talking about kind of the very illegal use cases earlier, I suspect that the market will end up producing some kind of a bunch of sort of darknet nodes who, you know, people who are kind of doing this fairly anonymously. But they're still going to be relying on reputation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's also going to be a way to deal with increasing money at stake, is to increase the number of
that's right,
like services like you, because of
that's
course
right.
if $1 million
that's right
contract or $10 million contract depends on which private key you're going to release, it's right. Also going to put you at risk in a sense, yeah. Because of course somebody can come put a gun to your head, right. and that might be economically real
right.
risk, right?
That's right. So if you were putting serious money in this, you know, you should be really combining multiple authorities. You shouldn't be putting huge sums of money on just our service. But at the same time, we can also do the same kind of thing internally, in that we can structure our organization such that if somebody put a gun to my head, I still wouldn't be able to, you know, just by myself give them the key. Maybe they need to, you know, find 3 guys in 3 different cities and put guns to all their heads, and they could do it.
That might be a good
that
thing
might be a good thing for me, or maybe a bad thing,
security,
that's right.
right.
As long as I can actually persuade them that, you know, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think we probably end up going in that direction. But like I say, you know, for big money, you want multiple authorities, and that makes everybody safer.
Well, I would say before we wrap up, so we're sort of coming towards the end, but do you want to go into very briefly your views on Bitcoin 2.0 protocols, whether it's like Ethereum or protocols that are more based on Bitcoin but trying to do the same thing? Yeah,
I can try. I'm maybe going to be a bit out of my depth here, so people who know a lot about these protocols are going to be kind of screaming into their computers about how wrong I am. What we were talking about earlier a little bit was the way there are now these kind of 2 competing schools of thought about how you can do complex contract logic on a decentralized platform, right? So there's kind of Gavin's bit Ethereum concept, which is also what the Ripple people seem to have taken up. And then there's the Ethereum idea that you can actually, run all kinds of contract logic on the blockchain and have all of the nodes. And if I've got this right about Ethereum, I hope I've got this right, that, you know, that if you've got a transaction, then all of the nodes in the network have to, you know, validate that or at least all the participating full nodes have to validate that transaction.
And to run the contract code.
I guess to run the contract code.
Of course.
I suppose that's how it works.
Of course, you could do the same thing as the bit theory.
Right, you could do the same thing.
Have the
that's right. You could certainly do the same thing on Ethereum, but the idea behind Ripple seems to be kind of that you can do this arbitrary contract logic. And I mean, the idea of doing arbitrary contract logic is a new thing, right? It's an innovation, and we haven't seen it tried yet. And I don't think anyone knows if it's going to work. We all hope it's going to work, and and we're kind of waiting to see. But I think I was saying this the other night, but I'm not even absolutely certain that Bitcoin incentive system is going to work. I mean, we know we have issues with decentralization. We don't really know. It seems like the miners all kind of run for a profit motive, but we haven't really seen a majority of really nasty miners at the moment. We haven't had a majority of really dysfunctional organizations running mining. The time we had that fork and everybody got onto IRC and said, okay, well, I'll give up my blocks. It was all kind of run by these kind of gentleman anarchists. And then we've kind of progressed to this time. We've got kind of guys like Ghash who, we don't know much about them, but at least they seem to be running with a strong profit motive. But even then, what happens when we get to the next stage of any business where it's run by kind of psychopaths with MBAs, right? And in a big organization, you can get really strange dysfunctional behavior where even if you might think, well, this doesn't seem to be in the interests of your company because you're doing something harmful to Bitcoin and your company is relying on Bitcoin. If you've got some weird organizational setup and you've given people funny bonuses, right? People can do very strange things. It probably wasn't in the interests of Lehman Brothers for the guys at Lehman Brothers to do what they did and to run up the debts they did, but they still did it. So I think even Bitcoin, which has had relatively a lot of kind of real world testing and a lot of serious stress testing with a lot of serious money at stake. Even there, we don't quite know whether the incentives work. And Ethereum, it's going to, is everybody really going to validate things properly? Are people going to do weird things? We don't really know any of that yet. Ethereum, it's in a way, it's a very ambitious project. So it seems like the kind of the bit Ethereum concept, the idea of handing this thing off to trusted oracles seems like we can be a bit more confident that that's going to work than we can be confident that Ethereum's going to work. But obviously, if Ethereum works, that's much better.
I think it will be extremely fascinating to see how this turns out. So we're at the end of our episode. If people want to try out Reality Keys, right? So the website is realitykeys.com.
That's right.
With the Runkeeper thing, I guess you're going to have some user interface on the web that people can actually use.
Yep. Actually, it's there right now, but it's a mess. You can see it if you're interested in it. It's at buymycoins.com. As in, I swear by my coins.
Okay.
But I'll we'll do a proper announcement once that's actually ready to use.
Okay, is there some other way people can contact you or get in touch with you?
Yep. So if you look at our website on the About page, we've got an email address as well, support@realitykeys.com. There's also our Twitter handle on the bottom of that, and we also monitor the relevant thread that's linked on our site at Bitcoin Talk if you want to talk about things there. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. I met some guys in Berlin who've been kind of puzzling over some things that I could probably have helped them with. So, please don't hesitate if you're not sure how something works or you're not sure how to do something. Then please do reach out. And I hope you can make something interesting.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's super interesting.
So just very briefly, as we kind of wrap up, we have one announcement to make. So far, the way we've been calling episodes, so we've had the regular episodes that we release on Mondays, and we had generally extra conference content on Thursdays. So the Monday episodes had the sort of regular episode numbers, and the Thursday episodes we generally gave other names. And so we are kind of breaking away from that. So we also can have some more flexibility about when to release what content. So for now on, we're going to number all the episodes as sort of regular episodes. And so there may be some changes there, but it's mainly as far as the naming goes and perhaps some of the release schedule, but not much. So thanks so much for listening. If you want to support us, you can donate to us, which is very much appreciated. You can do that at epicenterbitcoin.com/tips.
And thank you to those who have donated.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We received a few donations recently, and we don't know who you are, but thank you.
$50 recently, so that was nice. And you can also follow us on Twitter at Epicenter BTC. And if you want to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, which goes out every Friday, and you can do that at epicenterbitcoin.com/newsletter. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.